I actually printed this out a couple days ago. It was published in Newsweek day before yesterday, and I was going to save it. I printed it out, and I've got the probably 50 pieces of paper, or bundles of paper here on my different stories and articles and things that I want to share with you. And I move them around relative to, okay, maybe I'll do that one tomorrow, maybe. And this one I figured, I'll do this as a geeky science alert later on in the week because it's going to be headline news, right? This is, in which case I probably can't even do it as a geeky science. And so I just waited a day, expecting this story that I'm about to tell you about to be the story that leads on ABC, NBC, CBS, MSNBC, CNN, Fox News, New York Times, Washington Post. I expected it to be everywhere. And it's nowhere. And so I'm going to tell you about it. I think this is probably the biggest story of the year. And that is that in a new study that was just published in the journal JAMA Pediatrics. This is a Journal of the American Medical Association Pediatrics. This is a peer-reviewed journal published by the American Medical Association about children's medicine, pediatrics. And in this study, they looked at a large cohort, right? This was a study of children born in Quebec. This was done by the University of Montreal. Children born in Quebec between January 1st, 1998 and December 31st, 2009. This is 145,456 infants. That's a huge cohort. That's a huge chunk of people to study. When you study, it's like we look at polling data and there's only like 300 people in the poll and we say, the margin of error is, plus or minus 5% or 10% or whatever. When you're looking at over 150,000 babies being born, you've got a large enough statistical sample that any math that comes out of that is probably really solid. Let me just read you one sentence out of this story from Newsweek that summarizes basically the whole thing. In fact, I'll read you two sentences. The study published Monday in JAMA Pediatrics, and today is Thursday. Monday, I expected Tuesday all hell was going to break loose because of this story. The study published Monday in JAMA Pediatrics finds women who took SSRIs, that is the selective serotonin reuptake inhibitor variety of antidepressant drugs, Prozac, Paxil, I can't even remember the names of most of them, but the very popular and very, very addictive. I mean, withdrawal from these things gives people the sensation of electric shocks in their brain. I mean, these are horrible drugs in my opinion. Other than for the relatively small number of people for whom they actually provide some benefit. But anyhow, let me start over again. The study published Monday in JAMA Pediatrics found women who took SSRIs during pregnancy increased their child's risk for autism by 87%. I mean, that's a holy cow. In particular, the study finds these medications may be most harmful to the fetus during the second and third trimester of pregnancy. Now, they're assuming that the mechanism of action here. Oh, by the way, this astonished me even more. We have known this since 2004, only not with humans, just with other mammals, mice. In 2004, a study was published in the peer-reviewed journal Science, the official publication of the American Association for the Advancement of Science, the AAAS. Arguably one of the two most prestigious scientific journals in the world, Science and Nature being the two. In 2004, a study published in Science, researchers gave pregnant mice SSRI drugs, and they observed notable biochemical differences in their offspring, in their babies. Heightened levels of anxiety was one particularly noteworthy finding. So they say, although the exact reason for the association between SSRIs and autism risk isn't known, the authors suggest the drug could alter neurotransmitter levels in utero, in other words, in the baby's brain while the baby is still cooking inside mom. SSRIs work by blocking the serotonin transporter, thus called selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors. See, in the body we have cells that produce serotonin, and we've got cells that uptake serotonin and break it down into, amino acids and send it back out to the bloodstream. In other words, cleanse us of serotonin. Because we have serotonin and melatonin cycles that go opposite each other. During the day, our serotonin levels go up. One of the main things that causes that is bright light, sunlight, daylight. In fact, I used to, through most of my life, I always knew in December, January, February, particularly January, February, because I grew up in Michigan. I've pretty much most of my life I've lived in the North. The one exception to this was the 13 years we lived in Atlanta, where we had long summer, long bright winter days. I never had this problem in Atlanta, but every place else I've lived during the winter months, I would get lethargic. I would be inclined toward depression. It was never clinical depression or anything like that, but you just feel kind of the blahs. Feel less enthusiastic, less energetic. It's because the sunlight is what stimulates the production of serotonin. And I've noticed in particular, I've not had that problem for the last 5 years living here in Washington, D.C., because I've been doing this TV show at night, and because we're doing the radio show simulcast as television, I'm looking right now at all kinds of really bright lights. And we're using daylight light bulbs, daylight spectrum, these green spectrum light bulbs. And it has eliminated my seasonal affective disorder, SAD. So anyhow, what happens is during the day, the daylight boosts your serotonin levels, which makes you feel good. And then at night, when your body detects darkness, it shuts down the production of serotonin. Those serotonin reuptake cells in the body start breaking down the serotonin, and other cells start producing a compound called melatonin, which basically puts us to sleep, shuts us down and lets us go to sleep. And which is why, you take melatonin before you go to bed, and it regulates your sleep cycle. And for example, last week when I was in Moscow, I was taking melatonin every night at local Moscow time, and I'd go to sleep. I had no jet lag the whole trip. And coming back, I had no jet lag because I was taking melatonin. And because I was going out of my way as soon as the sun came up in the morning, local time, to stick my face in the window and not look right at the sun, but get a whole big dose of sunlight. So what the SSRI drugs do is, by reducing the ability of the body to absorb and destroy serotonin when it's appropriate, which would be nighttime, by reducing that, they raise the overall serotonin levels in the body. Serotonin is a feel-good chemical. So people say, hey, I feel better, or I feel less depressed. Right? This is the mechanism of action that's generally accepted. There's still actually some debate about exactly how SSRI drugs work, or how, and these are incredibly complex systems. But for developing babies, that balance between serotonin and melatonin is vital to the development of the brain, and apparently. And here, again, back to this article. Though the exact reason for the association between SSRIs and autism risk isn't known, the authors suggest that drugs could alter the neurotransmitter levels in utero. SSRIs work by blocking the serotonin transporter, which could cause a buildup of serotonin in the space between the cells. When a pregnant woman is on SSRIs, the drug compounds can be found in her amniotic fluid. In other words, the baby's breathing this stuff. A high level of serotonin impacts early cellular development in a number of ways. There's also evidence that people with autism have higher levels of serotonin in their blood platelets and lack the ability to synthesize serotonin. Why? Well, because while they're developing, they're awash in serotonin because mom's taking SSRI drugs that keep the serotonin levels up. So their little brains say, hey, we don't need to produce these serotonin-producing things. And so basically when the babies are born, they are going, this is my theory, right? I mean, this is my understanding, layman's understanding and explanation. I'm sure I'll get 30 emails from researchers telling me I'm crazy, but or validating it. Who knows? But if a child, particularly in the second, and the epidemiological evidence is really solid about the second and third trimester, and this is when most brain development is happening, right? The sophisticated brain development, the stuff that actually has to do with the cognitive brain. First trimester, you're getting the brainstem basically. But when the baby is born, that baby has spent 6 to 9 months awash in serotonin. The baby's brain, perhaps, my speculation, has lost the ability to produce serotonin, or maybe other cells in the body. There's a lot of serotonin produced in our gut as well. And so the baby becomes serotonin deficient, and they're basically going through SSRI withdrawal for the rest of their lives. I mean, this becomes a hardwired problem, not a short-term problem. I don't know why this isn't the biggest story on television, other than the fact that the pharmaceutical companies that sell these drugs are handing hundreds of millions of dollars every year off to the big networks for their television advertising. It's the only thing I can come up with. Because I would think that every woman of childbearing age in America should know this. And this is not, I mean, the association between thimerosal, mercury and vaccines and autism and stuff like that. That's, some of that is established, some of that is disputed. Some of it may or may not be relevant. But this is not in dispute. This is past peer review. This was published by the Journal of the American Medical Association in their pediatrics journal.
To watch more clips from our programs, hit the Watch More Videos button over here. And please be sure to hit the handy-dandy subscribe button so you'll always be up to date. Tag, you're it.